they know cyber, but they don't know what you can deliver in terms of threat intelligence.
Hello and welcome to episode 10, season 2 of your Cyber Threat Intelligence podcast. Whether you're a seasoned CTI expert, a cybersecurity professional, or simply curious about the digital battlefield, our expert guests and host will break down complex topics into actionable insights. On this episode of season 2, our host Pedro Kertzman will chat with Marcelle Lee, CEO and founder of Fractal Security Group. With over 12 years in cybersecurity, her journey includes some of the most elite threat research teams in the industry. She's a threat researcher, educator, and intel analyst with deep expertise in cyber threat intelligence, digital forensics, and intrusion analysis. She holds 4 degrees, including a master's in cybersecurity and numerous certifications ranging from CISSP to Certified Ethical Hacker. Over to you, Pedro.
Marcelle, thank you so much for joining the show. I'm really happy to have you here.
Thanks, Pedro. I'm excited to be here today.
So we were talking before, and I think it's important, throughout the conversations I had on the podcast, often we have like a lot of frameworks, threat actors this, methodologies that, like a lot of information across the industry. But one thing, it's often, we get distracted sometimes. But I think it's important always to, keep the main thing. Stakeholders. So we were talking about this, right? The PIRs and the importance of the PIRs for stakeholders. So would you mind just, giving us a little bit of your background again, and when it comes to, again, PIRs and the importance of PIRs for stakeholders, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So I have been working in cybersecurity for probably about 14, 15 years now and doing cyber threat intelligence for the vast majority of that. Mm-hmm. I've worked in a variety of different spaces from U.S. government, Department of Defense, to MSSPs, managed security services providers, mm-hmm. and also just private companies. Well, not private, public companies actually, but mm-hmm. Working more on the InfoSec side of things. And with every single one of those roles, I've had a different set of stakeholders. And this is where PIRs, or priority intelligence requirements, come into play. They're so essential because you can't just write threat intel, or create threat intel products for the ether. You have to be writing for a specific audience. Otherwise, it's kind of meaningless. Mm-hmm. So I'm excited to talk about that today. Part of my background, too, is as an educator. So I do teach cyber-related courses at university here in the U.S., where I live. And also I do private training courses, too. So I'm very, very engaged in, these are also stakeholders, students and trainees and that kind of thing. So it's something that's kind of near and dear to my heart.
One of the things that sometimes people more anxious just to start producing results, right?
Yeah.
A very important thing would be to understanding the stakeholders first, and to put in, more lame terms, would be interviewing those stakeholders to begin mm-hmm. with.
Yeah.
Any insights around that? And then from your experience, because you had quite a few different experiences, if we're talking about private sector, how mm-hmm. you go by interviewing your C-level or you name it, VPs, any insights about particular getting to know your stakeholders from a private sector standpoint?
Yeah, so I think it's really helpful to have sort of like a questionnaire or checklist that you can use for when you're engaging with your stakeholders. And, mm-hmm. and engagement is an important part of it. I mean, you can guess all day long what's important to them, mm-hmm. but, that's not the same thing as having a conversation or, asking them pointed questions. And, for example, one of my roles, when I was part of the InfoSec team, we were producing threat intelligence for for all of InfoSec and executive leadership and, occasionally other teams too. It was really a pretty broad swath of teams that we supported. And what, say, the security awareness team wants from you in terms of threat intelligence is not going to be the same as what maybe the red team wants or your GRC team. Like they all are going to have different things. And the trick with it, I think, too, is that these groups, they know cyber, right? But they don't necessarily know what you can deliver in terms of threat intelligence. So you need to come to the table prepared to sort of explain what sorts of things you can offer them and not just expect them to know off the top of their heads, because they won't necessarily. So it's a little bit of kind of coaching involved with it as well, I would say.
Got it. So education first. So they first have some level of awareness of your possible deliverables, and then to engage on the sort of maybe interviewing, then to have the information you want from them.
Right.
Awesome. And what about the other ones from an MSSP side and public sector side, when necessarily you're not you don't have that super direct connection with those stakeholders?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So from MSSP side, typically you're going to have a wide variety of clients. You won't necessarily know, say, for example, about their tech stack. So how do you know that they're going to be interested in XYZ vulnerability that just came out? So for that, and often when I worked in that space, I was the person responsible for covering emerging threats. So there's always lots of emerging threats, right? So how do you decide what is going to be of interest or relevant to your clients? And I think at that point, you kind of just have to go with your gut a little bit, what is going to appeal to the broadest number of clients. And to be honest, Pedro, I kind of do this now because I don't know if you've seen my weekly cyber threat bulletin that I publish. But again, my stakeholders are the world, whoever reads it. And so I just curate it based on, what I think are the most impactful type things that are happening in cyber landscape. So it was the same thing a little bit with the clients. But I think where you get sort of a differentiator there is looking at what it is that you're delivering. So are clients really interested in say a super long form malware deep dive? I'm going to say probably not, right? You might get a couple of clients who are interested at that, level of depth. But I think something a little more digestible is more important. I do think also, providing mappings, and I know this isn't about frameworks and whatnot, but when you're doing reporting or production for, a wide group of clients, you got to at least have, actionable things in there. So mapping TTPs to the MITRE ATT&CK framework, providing indicators of compromise with context, because without context, I personally am not going to do anything with an IOC that somebody gives me with zero context, because I'm I don't know where this came from. So that's an important piece of it too. So just making sure that your TI product is pretty robust and hopefully usable to the maximum number of clients. So it's a little bit different there, I think. And then, of course, an important part of it too, which you tend to have varying degrees of this, right? But a feedback loop, I think a lot of times companies kind of forget that part, but it's really important to have a feedback loop where you're making sure that what you're producing for clients is what they want to see. Because you might think, oh, this is, the greatest thing since sliced bread that I'm putting out there. And they might be like, this is not useful to us at all. But if you don't have a dialogue, then how do you know? And I do think that companies kind of miss the mark on that sometimes.
Yeah, no, feedback loop, definitely important. I was talking to another government entity last episode, actually. And that's a fundamental part to improve, right? The services and all that, to the community they're serving.
Yeah. And I will say, like, when I was in the government space, they did a pretty good job of that feedback loop. Like there was a mechanism for people to respond to what you'd written and say, if it was useful, how it was useful. So I really liked that, but I haven't seen that so much in private sector or MSSP space.
Yeah, I think it's part of the maturity, right, of
Yeah.
the industry as a whole. Yeah, that's interesting. And any other insights from when it comes to like interviewing stakeholders, regardless then private, public sectors, like on your experience, like how to get deeper into the real. Sometimes you ask that first question, it comes that automatic answer, but that's not the real quote unquote pain. How to uncover
Yeah.
that, things
Yeah.
of that
So,
nature.
yeah, sure. So one of the things that I used to do when I was part of the InfoSec team is I would ask to be invited to whatever regular cadence meeting that particular team had. So say, it's the risk team meets once a week or whatever. I would ask to be able to come to that meeting so I could talk to everybody on the team and just tell them a little bit about the kind of things that I'm seeing in the industry. And that way I can get more of a dialogue going, and get, you can kind of gauge better what, it's setting off people's antennas or not, right? So they might be like bored about one thing, but then get excited about something else. And so making, that kind of like a regular thing where you periodically dip into their team meetings, I think is super helpful.
Got it. So more like being part of the day-to-day operations they have,
Yeah.
and less like that pointy, interviewer that is not
Right.
actually embedded on their day-to-day operations.
Right. Because you want to be kind of seen as part of the team, right? And that doesn't necessarily happen like organically. Yeah. So just getting the other teams used to the idea of, these intel people are here to like help you do your job, right? Um, and depending on the environment, you might have like a ticketing system where people will put in requests for different kinds of threat intel. And this is another area too where you really need to work with your stakeholders, because sometimes you'll get like kind of like a vague request, like tell me everything you know about phishing or whatever.
Yeah.
And then you have to reach back and be like, figuring out exactly what it is that they're trying to get at, right? Because it's going to be something specific. They just don't maybe know how to like enunciate it.
Yeah.
So I was also going to say too, knowing what kind of outputs is an important thing in this scenario too with the InfoSec team. So in the role that I had, was working for a large data center company, we had one type of report basically, but that didn't really meet the needs of all the stakeholders. So we dreamed up like a bunch of different offerings. So that turned into like a weekly cyber threat landscape report, kind of like what I'm doing now, my LinkedIn newsletter, just like a quick synopsis of just like what's happening in the news. And we also had like quarterly webinars where we would go through different intelligence that we'd covered over the past quarter. And that was really useful because people maybe hadn't actually read some of our reporting, but when they come to a webinar and see like a little synopsis of everything, they're like, oh, that's cool. And then we would see like readership would go up after these because people were like, oh, I want to read that report or, whatever. So it's also kind of, reinforcing the work that you're putting out there, and making sure that you're producing input that's going to be easily digestible. And then we could talk about too, like the difference between, say, reporting or doing some kind of TI product for executives, for example. Like if you're asked to brief the board of directors about a particular threat, that's going to be entirely different than like writing a threat intel report for like the security operations center, right? It's the audience is so different. And that's something I think that gets lost a little bit too. Like your executive or your board do not care about the minutia about the threat TTPs. They don't care about indicators of compromise. They care about, what is the bottom line for the company? How is this potentially going to impact us? And that sort of thing. So that's another part of knowing your audience, is just making sure you're delivering the right kind of information to each stakeholder.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, and you touched on a very good point, right? Whenever we're talking about stakeholders, either on the first interactions, right, to interview them, to get to know what they care about, and you mentioned bottom line and all like the stakeholder related KPIs and things of that nature. But I think you put it, and maybe I'll break down a little bit. I love the way at least the way I understood you're saying, don't try to interview your stakeholders, but try to be part of their day-to-day operations.
Yes,
So
exactly.
they will feel that you're not like that consultant that is just come in and out, do your job, and produce something. And you're more part of the day-to-day part of their life from now on.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
So that's, for me, I think that's more relevant. That's more important. I think that would be like a good takeaway for people to have, like, be part of their day-to-day operations.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, at the end of the day, you want to provide value to, these are your customers. They might all work for the same company, right? But they're still your customers. And you want customer satisfaction. You want to be able to deliver what it is that they actually need. And you can't do that in a vacuum. You have to have, lots of conversations and dialogue and that kind of thing.
100%, 100%. And to stitch some of the things together, being part of that cadence with your internal customers, you will start those quote unquote interviews. You're going to have the first understandings of their requirements or PIRs. You might not get things 100% right. So then on the next interactions you're going to have with them, you're going to fine-tune them a little bit.
Right.
And then you're
exactly.
going to fine-tune them again. You're going to produce more outputs, and then you're going to fine-tune them again. It's going to be a constant loop. And then you're going to get things way better, into a point where, the flow will make things naturally closer to quote-unquote ideal, right?
Yep.
When they will really see value on the intelligence you're producing to your internal stakeholders. And, if you're doing things right, to your internal customers, it's not going to be one customer only. Going to
Right,
have
exactly.
a lot of internal customers.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Word gets around, right?
Yeah.
And, I look at it kind of like being in the role of a trusted advisor. That's kind of what it feels like to me. And I think also an important piece of this too is making other folks comfortable with asking questions, or, because maybe they don't know as much about, say, threat intel topics and whatnot. You don't want them to be afraid to ask because they're going to look silly or something like that, right? So again, it's that relationship building and building trust and just making people feel comfortable that they can come to you and ask you anything, right? Like, explain to me what's the difference between snitching and phishing and quishing and all the fishes, because we know that kind of stuff. We work in it all the time, but not everybody else does. So,
yeah, no, I love that the no, it's a safe space to ask, whatever questions they feel like asking. I love that.
For sure.
Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. So I mean, I think people maybe don't even think about all the ways that threat intel can inform different teams, but just some examples like, so with the red team, you can share with them like what are the latest tools that threat actors are using. So like everybody knows Cobalt Strike, right?
Hmm.
But then there's other ones that came about, like Sliver, for example. And if you could provide information about how threat actors are using Sliver, the red team might want to incorporate that into their penetration testing, right? Like, oh, well, here, we'll use this tool and see if it gets picked up. Especially for like purple team exercises too,
Hmm.
that's really useful. And then on the flip side, you can work with like detection engineering to help them make sure that they have coverage to detect new tools that are being used, that kind of thing. So that's, I think, just a couple of examples. I will also say like security awareness. This one company where I worked, we had an in-house security awareness team. So they built all their own materials. It was fantastic. But we would help provide them with like kind of ripped from the headlines kind of fodder for their thing. So they might create a phishing campaign, like a test thing, right? And it would be based on something that we've been seeing lately. So very, very current. And that's different from a lot of security awareness training that you get, right? Which is not current at all. and and then let's see, the risk team, they would base risk calculations on information we gave them about like just sort of the likelihood of different types of threats occurring. So yeah, so the list just goes on and on. There was lots of different ways that you can help different stakeholders. And all these things apply, like in MSSP, right? You can think of the different angles for your clients, like the ways that you could help them. You might not have that direct interaction, but you could still be mindful of the possible ways that they could use the information that you're providing.
Got it. No, that's an awesome point. Um, any like, how can I put this? It's quote unquote easier for us to create a direct correlation between the information or assessments CTI will bring and how to leverage that to, like you mentioned, purple teaming exercises, technology tools, and how that information can be impactful to technology areas and all that. Any examples at any point that you remember that CTI brought valuable information to known quote unquote direct related areas or not so common areas? For example, CTI brought valuable information that were leveraged to mitigate or help like logistics or you name it, HR or finance, you name it, like a non-traditional, super direct,
Right, right.
connected area to
So not
technology.
InfoSec, but other
Yes,
teams.
yes, something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So there's quite a few examples of that. One that comes to my mind is working with like the marketing and PR team because we might see something um, like threat actor chatter where they're talking about the company
Hmm.
and the marketing team they track for sentiment analysis typically, but they might not be looking the same places that we're looking,
Yeah,
like threat actor space.
yeah.
So that's been a way that we were able to help that team, is just be like, hey, did you see this particular tweet? Or maybe it's a Telegram message that they're never going to see with whatever tools they're using, just so they're aware that some kind of chatter is out there that might not be good for the company.
Hmm.
And then I think with other teams like finance and HR, I see like around phishing being like the more useful thing, because we can look at different phishing campaigns that are targeting those kinds of groups, right? And then be like basically give them a heads up that, if you see a message or something like this, that you should be very leery of it.
Yeah.
So that was one way. And then another is working with DevOps teams. They are a pretty unique environment. They're very targeted, even more so like these days with the supply chain and whatnot.
Oh, yeah.
So yeah, working with those teams, just again, it's kind of more around education, but not so much security awareness, more like very specific. This is a campaign that's happening right now. You need to be aware of it. And then obviously, of course, like I already talked about, like the detection engineering piece is really important, and that's going to protect all your employees, hopefully, right? If you're just blocking stuff that's going to be coming down the pike anyway. But yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It's not just InfoSec. There's definitely other teams that you can support as well.
Got it. That's amazing. Marcelle, any final thoughts to the audience?
Yeah, no, I think just communication is key. And you know how it is. A lot of us working in cyberspace are a little maybe on the introverted side. So it's a little, daunting sometimes to have to think about, let's go talk to all these other people. But it's really important. And at the end of the day, you're going to make yourself more useful to your team, but also to all the other teams too. And that's what helps us keep our jobs. So,
absolutely.
So there's that. Yeah. And then you learn more too, right? Because I think my interactions with all these different teams really informed my understanding of how those teams work. So, again, it's one of those cycle things, right? Like you learn more, and then it just helps you improve what you're doing and educates you further. So it's a win-win, really.
100%.
Even if it seems a little hard.
Could not agree more. Marcelle, thank you so much for so many insights. I really appreciate you coming to the show, and I hope I'll see you around. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me. It was really fun. I love talking with you.
Awesome. Thank you.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in. If you found this episode valuable, don't forget to subscribe, share, and leave a review. Got thoughts or questions? Connect with us on our LinkedIn group, Cyber Threat Intelligence Podcast. We'd love to hear from you. If you know anyone with CTI expertise that would like to be interviewed in the show, just let us know. Until next time, stay sharp and stay secure.